Let me ask you a question that no one wants to face, but everybody's been thinking about. Why is America, the so-called leader of the free world, now openly showing support for Pakistan against India? Oh, we're not gonna tiptoe around it no more. The signs are loud, the moves are bold, and the silence from D.C. is even louder. But let me tell you something that'll shake you to your core. This ain't about borders. It ain't about terrorism. It's about fear, control, and a superpower grasping at straws while a sleeping giant named India rises from the ashes of colonialism with fire in its eyes. You ever seen somebody smile in your face and clap for your success? But the moment you turn your back, they whisper in the ear of your rival. That's what's happening right now. America isn't just supporting Pakistan with aid, arms, and diplomatic leniency. They doing it while pretending they still friends with India. That ain't friendship. That's manipulation, and anybody who's been broke and had to claw their way up knows exactly what that feels like. See, the reason America is leaning toward Pakistan ain't because of loyalty. It's because they see India becoming something they can't control. India ain't begging for favors no more. India's not accepting hand-me-down technology, hand-me-down policies, or hand-me-down respect. No, sir, India's building satellites, defending its borders with its own iron, launching digital revolutions, and speaking in a voice that don't tremble anymore. And when a once colonized nation stops asking and starts building, oh, that shakes the pillars of old power. Now, let me take you back. For decades, Pakistan was America's so-called ally in the war on terror. Billions of dollars in aid, strategic bases, all that jazz. But here's the kicker: America knew, year after year, intelligence after intelligence, that the same place they were funneling billions into was also the playground of extremists. They turned a blind eye. Because it served their strategy, control, divide and rule. If the subcontinent stayed distracted by rivalry, they stayed dependent, and the last thing America wants is for India and Pakistan to stop fighting and start rising together. That's the real fear, but India messed up that plan. You know how? By refusing to play puppet, by investing in its own defense, by building alliances with Russia, Iran, UE, and now Africa. India's playing its own chessboard, not America's. And the West can't stand that. Let me break it down in real talk. Imagine two kids in school. One was always the teacher's favorite, got picked first for every game, praised for everything. That's Pakistan in America's eyes. The other kid, the quiet one, studied hard, watched, learned. Then one day, the quiet kid became the smartest, strongest, most respected student in the class. And the teacher starts feeling threatened. That's India, and now that teacher America. Don't clap for India anymore. They critique, they delay trade deals, they push Pakistan forward like it's the underdog needing help. But let's be real, this ain't about helping Pakistan. It's about slowing India down. You see, America don't like when you rise without asking for permission. They're used to being the architect of everybody else's success. But India ain't asking no more. India's creating its own blueprint. You think the U.S. is mad because India buys oil from Russia? No, they mad because India buys oil from whoever it wants. They mad because India tells Washington we'll talk, but we ain't begging. That's what shakes them. Now they trying every trick in the book. Propaganda, sanctions, threats, ignoring Indian voices in international forums, all while giving Pakistan the benefit of the doubt, even when caught red-handed. Why? Because Pakistan is the chaos card. A destabilized South Asia benefits nobody, except the ones who profit from arms, distractions, and dependency. But India ain't folding, not now, not ever. You got a nation with 1 billion people saying we will rise, and we will rise on our terms. That ain't arrogance. That's centuries of suppression finally turning into self-respect. That's what scares America more than any missile test or military drill. And don't get it twisted. This ain't just politics. This is spiritual. This is civilizational. India ain't just a country. It's a 5000-year-old civilization that remembers its roots while building its rockets. America, a few hundred years old, can't comprehend that. They can't understand how India still moves with humility and pride in the same step. So they confuse dignity with threat. Let me tell you something powerful. When the world fears you, they don't attack your body first. They attack your image. That's why you see global media twisting stories about India. That's why every little move is blown up, exaggerated, debated in think tanks across D.C. and London. Because it's not India's power they fear, it's India's independence. It's India's refusal to follow. And America knows, once India becomes fully independent in defense, tech, economy, and narrative, there's no stopping her. And you best believe that day is near. So what do? They fund Pakistan, arm it, give it voice at the UN, all while pretending it's about regional balance. Nah, it's about fear. Fear that India will lead a multipolar world where Washington's word ain't law. And when that world arrives, oh believe me, those who thrived on control will be the ones screaming about fairness. But let me speak to the people now, to the youth of India, to the dreamers and builders. Don't look west for validation. Look within. Your ancestors carved temples out of mountains. You built mathematics, philosophy, astronomy, while others were still learning to write. Don't let temporary politics define your eternal legacy. Let America fund whoever they want. India is funding her future. And listen, it ain't about hating America. Don't get it twisted. It's about understanding the game. It's about seeing through the smiles and handshakes. It's about realizing that in global politics, nobody claps for your rise unless they control it. The moment you rise without their permission, they'll call you a threat. That's what India's facing, not hostility, jealousy, not war, economic sabotage, not disagreement, strategic containment. But every time India breaks another record, launches another innovation, builds another alliance, that strategy crumbles a little more. And let's talk about morality for a second. America talks about democracy and human rights. But where were those values when Pakistan harbored extremists? Where were those values when minorities vanished in Pakistan without trial? Silent, that's what they were. Silent, because politics don't care about morality, only leverage. India, on the other hand, is held to a double standard. Why? Because the world expects more from a leader. And that's what India is becoming. A global leader, whether America likes it or not. You know what's funny? America thought they could slow India down with soft power manipulation. But India turned around and became a soft power beast. Bollywood, yoga, tech, culture. Even the Silicon Valley CEO, most of them are Indian born. So now they trying to turn that into a threat too. Ain't that something? Look. You can't stop a storm by ignoring the wind, and you can't stop India by propping up Pakistan. Because Pakistan, for all its potential, is running on borrowed time and borrowed money. It's a pawn, not a player, and pawns get sacrificed. But India's playing long game chess, so let America choose its side. Let it support Pakistan in back rooms, in think tanks, with military toys. That's fine, because India don't need permission. She's got self-respect, ambition, and a memory of every time she was underestimated. And every time she rose regardless. To every Indian listening, know this, you are not defined by Western alliances. You are defined by your work, your culture, your vision. Let them fear you. That means you're doing something right. Let them question you. That means they're watching, but never ever beg, never shrink, never compromise your roots to be accepted, because the future belongs to those who walk their own path, and India She ain't walking anymore. She's running, and the world is trying to catch up. So why is America supporting Pakistan against India? Because India stopped being the student and became the teacher. And nothing scares a former superpower more than realizing the class has changed. They can fund all they want, but they can't fund destiny, and destiny is speaking loud and clear. From the heart of Bharat to the boardrooms of Beijing, from Silicon Valley to the sands of Rajasthan, India is coming. And this time, not to ask, but to lead. It marked the birth of India's assertive military doctrine, backed by innovation. India's civilizational model is not a revival, it's a reckoning. For centuries, this model was suppressed, distorted, and marginalized in the name of modernity, colonialism, and global integration. But now, it is not only asserting itself at home, it's being exported globally, and it's shaking the foundations of the Western liberal world order. India no longer seeks approval for its rise. It isn't asking to be included. It is building something parallel, something enduring, something rooted not in fleeting ideologies, but in timeless values that have sustained it for over 5,000 years. What the West is facing is not just an economic competitor or a military power, it is a civilizational rival. This isn't about GDP rankings or global military index reports. This is about competing ways of organizing society, authority, individual purpose, and collective identity. While the Western liberal model champions individualism, relativism, and temporary political consensus, India's civilizational model is centered on dharmaris, responsibility, balance, purpose. It is not limited to statecraft. It permeates spiritual life, education, commerce, and even warfare. And this is what rattles Washington, Brussels, and London. Because they can negotiate with governments, they can threaten leaders, they can sanction economies. But how do you negotiate with a civilization that believes in its divine purpose? How do you contain a people who are not driven by colonized guilt, but by sacred memory? India's rise is not a product of chance. It is a return to form, and the world isn't prepared for that. When India conducts diplomacy, it doesn't wear a Western suit and repeat European scripts. It sends S. Jaishankar with unapologetic candor to international forums, speaking with the confidence of a people who have seen empires come and go. When India builds missiles, they're not just hardware, they're declarations that colonial shame is over. When Indian billionaires build tech empires, they're not just looking for profits. They're dismantling the narrative that Silicon Valley is the only place where genius lives. And while the Western liberal model is now under siege from within, facing identity crises, cultural fragmentation, and institutional distrust, India's civilizational model is offering something the modern world desperately lacks: coherence. It offers a sense of belonging that transcends elections, a moral compass that isn't bought in polling booths, and a resilience rooted in millennia of hardship and transcendence. Now the West is watching nervously. Their universities are studying India's ancient texts. Their strategists are reviewing India's cultural psyche. Their corporations are chasing the Indian market, not out of generosity, but out of necessity. And slowly, they are realizing that this is not the India they once patronized. This is not the India that would nod politely and accept lectures on democracy and human rights from former colonizers. This India is not interested in importing blueprints. It's creating its own, and here's the turning point. India's civilizational model is no longer just for India. It's resonating with other parts of the world disillusioned by Western liberal chaos. Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and even parts of Eastern Europe are looking at India and asking deeper questions. Why are our cultures eroded in the name of modernization? Why are our families disintegrating under imported models of freedom? Why does development come with a price tag of identity loss? And India, without preaching, is becoming the quiet answer. Even in tech, where the West dominated with profit, first surveillance, heavy ideologies, India is building platforms like UPI and Aadhaar that aren't just scalable, they're human-centric. India isn't copying Silicon Valley's greed, it's rewriting the DNA of digital infrastructure with ethics and inclusion. The West is realizing that India isn't just a consumer, it's a creator of alternative futures. In defense, India's assertive doctrine is not just about border security, it's about sovereignty of thought. Every time an Agni missile is tested or a Tejas fighter jet takes flight, it's a declaration that India will not rely on foreign mercy for its security. It's a message that the Indian soldier is backed by Indian brains, Indian innovation, Indian conviction. The West once laughed at India's defense ambitions. Now they're watching as Indian engineers create hypersonics, anti-satellite weapons, and quantum communication programs. Because this isn't just military evolution, it's civilizational continuity. India doesn't view defense through a purely modern lens. It's informed by Mahabharata strategies, Kautilya's Arthashastra, and the collective memory of resisting invaders for centuries, that history fuels not just strategy, but identity. And when identity is anchored in thousands of years, it cannot be intimidated by press releases from Washington or diplomatic pressure from NATO. It has depth, it has direction, and it has divine stubbornness. While the Western liberal model fragments society into competing victim groups and celebrates hyper-individualism, India's model speaks of harmony between self and society, between tradition and progress. It offers unity without uniformity, and that's why it's gaining ground globally. Other civilizations are tired of being told that in order to develop, they must abandon their roots. India is showing that roots don't hinder growth, they anchor it. What's terrifying to the West is that this alternative model is not only working, it's thriving, and it's doing so without submission, without apology, without the need for ideological sponsorship from Washington or the IMF. This is what civilizational confidence looks like. It's why India walks into BRICS. It's not as a junior partner, but as a sovereign voice. It's why India trades with Russia, negotiates with Iran, and dialogues with Africa on equal footing. And yet, the West continues to offer distractions. They push Pakistan forward on global stages as if propping up a foil will slow India down. They try to paint India's policies as authoritarian while ignoring their own domestic crises. They send reports and human rights lectures as if colonial memory doesn't exist. But India, anchored in civilizational memory, is not reacting. It's ascending. Even culturally, the West sees the shift. Bollywood isn't just entertainment. It's a soft power force. Indian spirituality is not just yoga poses. It's a philosophical export that's reshaping global wellness. Indian cuisine, fashion, literature, every sector is turning heads. Because when a civilization reclaims its voice, it doesn't need to shout. It just needs to speak consistently, authentically, relentlessly. And in this global race of narratives, India's civilizational voice is now being heard louder than ever. It's not echoing the Western tune, it's composing its own. A tune that says, we will not destroy our traditions to be seen as modern. We will not abandon our families to be called progressive. We will not surrender our sovereignty to be part of your club. The West expected India to modernize by westernizing, but India flipped the script. It modernized by Indianizing, and that right there is revolutionary. That is what challenges the Western liberal order, not aggression, but independence. Not war, but refusal to imitate. Not hatred, but unapologetic pride. The civilizational model of India is proving something profound, that dignity, duty, and dharma are not outdated relics. They are tools for global leadership. That a society rooted in its past can still innovate, govern, and inspire the future. That the values written in Sanskrit texts centuries ago still hold wisdom in a digital age. And as this model gains traction globally, as it finds resonance in nations who once felt colonized in spirit, the Western liberal elite begins to panic, because they cannot sell guilt to a society that remembers its glory. They cannot sell identity confusion to a people who chant mantras of self-realization. They cannot sell temporary freedoms to a culture that lives by eternal truths. India is no longer the subject of someone else's foreign policy blueprint. It's drawing its own map. It's no longer the junior partner. It's becoming a civilizational alternative. And while some in the West may call this nationalism or populism, it's neither. It's civilizational reawakening. It's the quiet thunder of a people who never forgot who they were, even when the world told them to. That's why every Indian tank, satellite, and trade agreement feels like more than a transaction. It feels like a restoration. That's why every international summit where India speaks without fear is a step toward global balance, because when one civilization rises, the world doesn't fall apart. It gets rebalanced. It becomes multipolar. It becomes fairer. This is not the rise of a nation. It's the resurgence of a civilization that refused to die, refused to beg, and refused to forget. The world is now seeing India not through the lens of Western categories, but through the lens of its own dharma. And as that lens becomes clearer, the West will be forced to choose, compete with integrity, or fall trying to suppress what can no longer be denied.